Hey everybody! This episode is sponsored by Organic Tonic Kombucha. Organic Tonic is a small, family-owned operation producing bold, not-so-sweet craft kombuchas. You can mix them into distinctively delicious cocktails or mocktails, or just enjoy them on their own as a satisfying, substantive alternative to wine, beer, or soda. The signature bright, undiluted flavor is the result of small-batch brewing, high-quality, locally sourced ingredients, more tea, and less sugar. Hello, and welcome to episode 63 of The Four Top. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot-button topics in food and beverage. I am your host, Catherine Cole. This episode will drop in August, so we are going to dive deep into the world of refreshing beverages. First, we will discuss the secret world of seltzer connoisseurship. Next, are you sober curious? There are now alcohol-free bars where you can spend just as much on a mocktail as you would on a cocktail. And finally, speaking of cocktails, that's just one of the many high-end beverages you can now get in a can or bottle. Whatever happened to sitting down and just drinking out of a glass? We will discuss. And since this is a beverage-themed episode, we are recording today at the beautiful tasting room of Wild Roots, an Oregon distiller that makes vodkas infused with fresh local fruits, as well as delicious gins. I actually have the cucumber and grapefruit gin at my house right now, and I'm very much enjoying it this summer. So thank you, Wild Roots, for hosting us. I am so thrilled also to be joined by an all-star beverage expert panel. Penelope Bass is senior editor at Imbibe magazine. Hello, Penelope.
Hello.
Michael Alberty is the wine columnist for the Oregonian newspaper and a freelance beverage journalist. Hello, Michael.
Hello, good morning.
And returning panelist Jordan Michelman is the founder and editor of Spread.com. Hello.
Hi.
All right, guys, let's get into our first course. Seltzer insanity is now fizzing. You thought seltzer was just flavored sparkling water. You were wrong. Whether it's the inexplicable success of LaCroix or the return of the New York Seltzer brand, or the hardliners who claim Polar is the only seltzer brand, this very basic beverage has a hardcore following of serious aficionados. There's even a secret Facebook group called Now Fizzing, whose members refer to themselves as the Fizz Fam. Jordan Michelman, I hear that you may be a member of this group.
Yeah, I am.
Why is our society so obsessed with seltzer right now? And just tell us more. I thought all seltzer tasted the same, didn't it?
Well, sure. Let me start by saying shout out to the Fizz Fam, many of whom are going to be listening to the show when it posts. There was some discussion about whether or not the first rule of Now Fizzing was to not discuss Now Fizzing, but it's been written about a little bit, and it's sort of the group is presided over by a really incredible team of mods. So if your listeners want to come get involved, have their hearts in the right place and be nice, or you will be denied entry.
A mod being a moderator?
That's right, yeah. Gosh, you said you thought all seltzer tastes the same?
I was kidding.
Okay.
I'm a beverage geek. I don't care.
Yeah. I think that kind of lots of stuff to unpack here. Specifically talking about the group, Facebook has sort of become a nightmare, and I've gotten to watch that very closely. I'm somebody who has like a .edu Facebook account. I was in it the first year, was my freshman year of college, which really dates me. But and I've watched as it's sort of rolled into layers and layers of awful, but there's maybe one or two good things still about it, and one are these private groups, which, depending on your interest or whatever, can be kind of fun and interesting. And a couple of years ago, some folks that are in the journalism and like music worlds out in New York started this seltzer enthusiast group, and it included some folks that I've worked with in the past, and I ended up getting invited into it, and this was a couple of years ago, and it sort of traveled with me over my life ever since, taking photos of seltzer on the way. I took a photo of the seltzer I'm about to drink right now and posted it on the group before the show started, and there's a couple thousands of us. People like to say it's the nicest place on the internet.
Oh.
People are genuinely nice to each other about their seltzer enthusiasm.
Is there any kind of initiation thing that you have to go through to get in?
Some people take like what are called physios.
Physios.
It's just like a seltzer video selfie where you film yourself drinking seltzer. But it's not required. There aren't any really hard and fast rules other than the group tends to not like too much content that's related to alcohol. It's not a strictly sober group, but there is a lot of sober encouragement and support, and I think that almost everybody involved in it is sympathetic and kind towards that style of life choice, or themselves an active, ascriber to that life choice. And but other than that, yeah, we talk about seltzer. There's also hot seltzer news as it happens. So when the LaCroix guy does another racist Trumpian grandpa thing, we talk about that. Yeah.
And so the seltzer you brought in, is that a Safeway store brand seltzer? So this isn't there's not a high barrier to entry in terms of being able to afford the product you guys are excited about.
That's a fair point. Their opinions abound on which are the best seltzers. Folks have a lot of different takes on that. Seltzer is also something that still sort of geolocates. So there's seltzers you can get in New York that you can't get on the West Coast. There's seltzers we can get in the Pacific Northwest that are very hard to get in other parts of the country. Mm-hmm. And if you're traveling, Europe and Asia are like wonderlands of seltzer and non-sugar carbonated products. There's a lot of debate over what is or isn't a seltzer, and that's a whole other thing. But Soleil, the Safeway house brand, is very well regarded by the group. No, I don't think there's any hard and fast class distinction or requirement. It doesn't all need to be, a $7 imported Borjomi, although that is a delightful fizzy water from Georgia.
Well, and before we go any further, maybe just quickly define what is a seltzer.
So,
as opposed to a club soda, or what's the difference?
So, club soda and seltzer are more or less the same thing. Club soda just isn't flavored. So, you can have an unflavored seltzer and you can have a club soda, and they will be pretty much indistinguishable. However, seltzers will have flavoring in them. Where the group kind of draws the line is on this note here that says 0 calories per can. Mm. So there's lots of things that claim themselves as seltzer, or will even say seltzer on the bottle, but they might have 5 or 10 calories from a little bit of fruit juice in the case of a Spindrift, or they may have as much as 90 or 150 calories, which New York Original Seltzer confusingly has a whole soda line that are really just like sodas, but it says seltzer on it. Mm. In the group, we refer to that as a snake. And so if somebody posts a can that's got calories in it, they're inundated with snake gifs and snake images. And
I thought this was the friendliest place.
Well, it is, but it's playfully friendly. And sometimes you'll see people be like, "Listen, I know this isn't canon. I know it's a snake, but I tried this and it was kind of good." So it's just more about understanding some of the groupthink around we're saying this is seltzer or this isn't seltzer.
Jordan, are there discussions in the group about water sources? I mean, is it like bagels, talking about New York water?
There is discussion in the group about water sources. There's also a lot of discussion in the group kind of trending away from things like Nestle products and so things like Pellegrino. There's some people in the group who'll be like, "Oh, I drank this great Pellegrino," and then there's some people in the group that will be like, "Thank you for ruining the earth by doing that. Great job." And there's a little bit of, I don't think there's any one kind of dogma on that. But yeah, people talk a lot about the water sourcing. That's something that I really love because I'm a Eurofizz guy. A lot of what I'm drinking and posting is fairly hard to Essen Tuki, or I mentioned Borjomi, or Jermuk, which is the really good mineral seltzer, sparkling mineral water from Armenia, which is delicious. So I really love that stuff, and that to me, it's maybe not classically the same as seltzer, where there's forced carbonation of water, and you think about it in the gun. That's more it's being pulled up from wells in the earth. But sparkling water, there's no calories. It fits in the group.
Are you picking up these exotic waters during your travels, or are these available, could I buy these online in the U.S.?
All in both, yeah.
Okay.
Jordan, do you tend to be a plain seltzer kind of guy? Because you've got a very vibrantly fruity one in front of you here.
So there are plain seltzer enthusiasts. In the group, we call plain seltzer Ghost.
Okay.
So it's my like your ghost favorite, and I do like have, and I guess all the mineral water stuff that I'm talking about, you would maybe consider ghost because it's not flavored, although it is flavored from the minerality of like the water source and stuff. But yeah, no, I don't drink a whole ton of plain seltzer. I sort of would more likely be to go with fruity flavored stuff. I have a 2.5-year-old who we thought it was adorable when she was like 6 months old that we were like gonna give her some seltzer, and now she just opens the fridge and takes a can and opens it and is like obsessed with it and demands bubble water and is like obsessed with it. So these sort of fruitier but no sugar, no calorie flavors are like a fun thing to share with her. So we have.
Is there a minimum age requirement to be a member of your group? I mean, how long until she's asking to join?
That's a good question. No, I mean a lot of people feature their kids. I'm popping this can open. A lot of people feature their kids. We're just talking so much about seltzer.
It is making me thirsty, this conversation.
It makes me want some seltzer. I think Facebook has a minimum age requirement. I don't believe the group does. But I'm not a mod, so you'd have to ask, you'd have to inquire with the moderators. I don't feel qualified to answer that question.
So what about SodaStream? Does that...
Yeah, SodaStream, people like it, and people will post their SodaStream stuffs, or the ISI, like the canister, little ISI canisters you sometimes see in cafes to carbonate coffee drinks, or you can use that to carbonate your own stuff at home. Yeah, people post stuff like that, or people post a lot of like, oh, I threw some fruit in my SodaStream and made myself a thing, and that's cool. It's like it's a little bit of the content.
Or Riesling.
Yeah, sure. So this is one of the things when I first joined. I was like, can I post? I really like sparkling wine. Can I post all this cool sparkling wine? And that was something that I sort of was educated by the group when I first joined by being like, well, my guess is there's probably other communities online for like all the wine that you'd like to drink to post about, and you should post them there.
Right.
But like this is sort of, unless it's special circumstances or like when there's been all the White Claw that's come out, that's been very hotly debated. Like, are we posting
And White Claw is a spiked seltzer.
Yeah, spiked seltzer. It's like, I think it's actually like technically a malt
Ew.
beverage.
They are taking over the world.
Yeah, it's a big thing. People really love it, and it's become this sort of like style totem for a certain sort of drinker. I think it's the same person who would have been drinking Four Loko or Zima or whatever. It's this like alt beverage thing, which I don't fully understand. But there's been a lot of it posted, and then I think there was even a post to follow that up a couple of weeks ago that was like, okay, everybody, I know we had fun Labor Day weekend with all the White Claw, but we're gonna back off on all that for a little while.
The White Claw followers are very defensive of their niche.
I imagine it's a rowdier group.
It's a rowdier group. So recently I wrote a newspaper article about canned wines, and immediately people were commenting in the comments section. They were talking about how White Claw just kicks the butt of canned wines. And I was like, oh, I didn't know this was a competition here, but okay. So I went and looked it up. A couple of years ago, canned wine sales for all of the United States in 1 year was like $48 million a couple of years ago. White Claw's Hard Cherry was $51 million. So just one of their SKUs sold more cans than all the canned wines in the United States in 1 year. So yeah, they're getting big. And they're also tying into the healthy lifestyle crowd, because my son's a long distance runner, and everywhere we go to these track meets and these Run for Paula kind of races in Oregon, there's the White Claw people with their booths set up, and they are promoting heavily within the running community. So I see them everywhere, places you wouldn't expect to see, Zima-like kind of products being consumed.
That's a real runner's high.
Yes, it is. Hard Cherry.
So have you all seen water sommeliers? Have you been to a restaurant? Jordan, have you experienced a restaurant that has a water list and a water sommelier?
Yeah, yes, I have, and this is something we've actually talked about a lot. We have a little. Sprudge has this like creative office that's in Southeast Portland, and one of the things we've talked about wanting to do with it is making like a water pop-up, like just serving water, like having like a water bar. Water's really interesting, and I don't say that to be like cheeky or like duh or whatever. It's something that I think like bread or some other kinds of products that we almost reflexively consume, if you step back and you're like, no, actually there's a difference between like the basic version and the good version and the extraordinary, ungettable, like amazing version. Water can kind of do that too. And the seltzer stuff is sort of more fun and it's flavored, but there's some really amazing kind of inexpensive, upper echelon of kind of water stuff that you can go out and find and drink. And some of the mineral waters, and it's typically Eastern Europe mineral waters that I mentioned, although there's some really lovely stuff that comes from France and from Wales and England and stuff too. The flavor experiences are amazing. It also makes you feel good when you drink it. If you're somebody who's like looking for something good to drink after a workout, or something good to drink like if you're in the sauna or at the spa or whatever, some of that kind of mineral water stuff, there's a reason why many different cultures around the world have figured this thing out independently of each other over human history. Like, water can be extremely delicious and also very good for you.
It's being taken very seriously. I mean, I don't know that there's a training program yet for water sommeliers, although MW is already taken.
I'm sure somebody will take your money. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that'd be happy to take your money for it.
The German Mineral Water Trade Association.
There you go. That's who'd take your money.
Actually does do
they'd be happy
sommelier.
to.
I'm seeing discussions of terroir of water. I don't think anybody's coined the phrase, spring to table yet, but I'm seeing that kind of talk from water sommelier community folks.
I get the impression, and maybe this is controversial, but I feel like the huge proliferation of the flavored seltzers appeals to people who don't like to drink water. Because we all know people that just don't drink water.
Right.
Like, do you think that's the case at all, Jordan?
I guess so. Yeah, I think that there's maybe also some what I think it appeals to people more of is the idea of crack a can, hear that sound, get the delivery of a product whose top you popped open and drank, but you're doing it in a way that isn't a lot of sugar or a lot of aspartame or necessarily always with alcohol in it. I'm somebody who I would like to enjoy beverages all the time, but I shouldn't be drinking wine constantly, and I definitely shouldn't be drinking soda all the time. And this sort of lets you do that in a way.
And there is pleasure in the texture of the bubbles, right? It's a little bit addictive, maybe.
Yeah, and it's also kind of okay, as long as you're recycling the can and you're recycling the cardboard box that it came in, which is very easy for us to do here in Portland, where we've got great enviable city recycling, and it's maybe not a bad thing. It's maybe the rare thing that we can say, not only do I enjoy doing this, but it's not bad for the world that I live in and would like to leave to my family.
Yeah, and I think the bubbles too is important, because we've been so conditioned to have something with food, and if you just have plain tap water with food, it's kind of
Yeah.
But if you've got something where you have to open a can or a bottle and it's got bubbles, even if it's not alcoholic, then you kind of feel I'm having something with food.
And there are pairings. There are really lovely seltzer pairings. One of the ones that I've posted about a lot on the group, and is sort of one of my favorites, is LaCroix, which I mentioned it's racist grandpa founder, but it is still very popular and the drinks are delicious, I should be clear. Makes a peach pear, which we call Pepe in the group. And it pairs wonderfully with a classic poke bowl, really classic marinated tuna and rice and maybe a little seaweed salad, and that peach pear.
Oh my gosh,
it's delicious good.
All right, well, I hate to bring this to an end, but I'm really thirsty, so I think we need to taste something. So we might just have to dig into some kombucha.
Yeah.
Which my 2.5-year-old is also obsessed with.
Well, that's an expensive habit for a 2.5-year-old.
We try to limit.
It's the lure of the SCOBY.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you a little bit about our wonderful sponsor, Organic Tonic. It's a small batch kombucha brewery in North Portland, started by a father and daughter, Dave and Allie. We actually all just met Allie. She's lovely. Who are focused on making handcrafted, unpasteurized kombuchas with uncompromised quality in each batch. And in a minute, we will be tasting some cocktails made with Organic Tonic kombuchas, as well as the delicious fruit-infused vodkas that are made here, well, not made here, poured here at the Wild Roots Tasting Room in Portland. Okay, well, we just got a little shot glass of hibiscus blood orange, and it looks really pretty.
Well, that's pleasant.
It's like just as dry as it should be.
I like the kind of like a tart, vinegary, almost balsamic kind of note. It's got that kind of...
You mean like natural wine, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's got the right color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the tart snap, but it's not too much vinegar flavor.
No.
Okay, well, one of us is going to be able to taste a cocktail that is called the Blood Orange Summer, and it's going to be this kombucha, the Organic Tonic Hibiscus Blood Orange Kombucha, with the Wild Roots Cucumber and Grapefruit Infused Gin, as well as a citrus passion syrup. So we will try that in a bit. But...
Only one of us gets to taste it.
Oh, well, we can pass it around.
I like this green tea a whole lot.
We're now tasting the green tea
nice.
kombucha. It's very subtle.
I think there's a little honey flavor.
Yeah,
in
it's
there.
got a little touch of sweetness to it.
Kefir, too, which is really good.
Oh, Capper. That first one with the hibiscus and the blood orange, I would make a popsicle out of that. I would freeze that. I would either make ice cubes or...
Thank you.
Now we have the lemon honey cayenne kombucha.
It's a slow-building little touch of heat, just a little bit.
The cayenne?
Yeah, just a little slow build. It's got a kind of a sativa-like flavor to it. Hops or sativa.
This lemon honey cayenne, it's savory. Remarkably savory. Yeah. And
Gets you in
spicy.
the back of the throat.
Yeah, this is a fish taco wine. This would be really good.
This is the Blood Orange Summer, which is Organic Tonic Hibiscus Blood Orange Kombucha, Wild Roots Cucumber and Grapefruit Infused Gin, and Citrus Passion Syrup.
Well, that's very refreshing. Would be a summer sipper.
Or a 10:30 a.m. sipper.
Yeah, either or.
Definitely 10:30 a.m.
Is there a distinction when it comes to summer drinking?
No, actually,
time apply?
there's not even a sunlight distinction in summertime drinking. I like the fact that the cucumber comes through
It really does.
on that. It makes it even crisper. This is one of those dangerous cocktails where, like, I would drink 2 or 3 of those without even thinking that,
Without even remembering that
without
there's alcohol
thinking
in
vodka
there.
was involved. Yeah, because it's just so refreshing and crisp. But there's more shot glasses arriving.
Yeah, this table's starting to look like a party.
To the outside of people walking by who know this is a vodka place
Yeah.
and are going to see all these shot glasses,
Filled with
Like, damn,
kombucha.
those guys
Filled with
go
kombucha.
hard.
like, wow, I want to listen to that podcast.
Okay, so I just brought you the ginger kombucha.
All right.
Indeed.
This is my favorite so far. I'm a sucker for anything ginger. I
Yeah,
love
the
this.
ginger is really good. It's got a little bit of that ginger spicy too.
Yeah, it's like a really authentic ginger flavor.
Yep.
And we have it in a bucha mule, which is ginger kombucha with pear-infused vodka and a little bit of rose cordial.
The rose is really coming out in this. In fact, I would take a bath in this. This is like perfumed bath water.
Just unwind.
This
at the
could be a
end of
new
long
trend. This could
day.
be a new trend. Long straw, cold bath.
Now that we're nice and soused, let's dig into our second course. Are you sober curious? Hand in hand with the seltzer trend we just discussed is a new hot sober trend. We're in this era in which mocktails, as I mentioned at the start, cost just as much as cocktails. And drinkers are increasingly turning to low alcohol spiked seltzers and no alcohol bars. Penelope Bass, I believe you are the doyen of the garden mocktail. So I'm curious what you think is going on with this new booze-free trend.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to clarify that I don't consider myself the doyen. I'm merely share other people's brilliant ideas.
Come on, take it. Just take it.
Okay, I'll take it. It's funny, actually, when I'm chatting with people and they find out that I write for a drinks magazine, they always want to know, what the latest trends are in drinking, and they often don't believe me when I say that, well, one of the biggest trends is not drinking. But it's true. I mean, we actually called it out in our Imbibe 75 last year, which is, our annual list of trends to watch for in the coming year. And we kind of dubbed it Temperance 2.0. And it is, the low alcohol things. But it's also completely alcohol free. Certainly there are a lot of factors contributing to consumers' choices to drink less. But, there are so many new ready-to-drink options available, like we just discussed with the insane number of seltzers that are out there. But also with the proliferation of the craft cocktail movement, I think a lot of people are just expecting more options when they go out, and they're expecting better options. So this is an answer to that. And if you look at the cocktail scene today, I mean, we're seeing entirely alcohol-free cocktail bars open up, which is kind of a new concept. There's Listen Bar in New York City, which, you know, to be fair, it's like a pop-up open one night a month. So it's kind of an ongoing experiment. There's places like Getaway in Brooklyn, which is newer, and they're just open regular full-time hours, and they have a cocktail menu that's completely alcohol-free. And they're intriguing-looking drinks. I should also note that there is pushback against the term mocktail.
Oh.
Just because it kind of connotes that these drinks are somehow fake or less than, when really a lot of bars are putting just as much thought and energy and resources into crafting, you know, a creative non-alcoholic program. There's a bartender in Chicago, Julia Momase, who has been doing, you know, amazing things for years, and she kind of coined the term spirit-free as a new way to talk about these drinks. And, you know, she's put together full, like, non-alcoholic cocktail pairing menus for, you know, fine dining dinners at Oriole in Chicago, and she now has her new bar called Kamiko. She has like omakase-style cocktails. She's got an entire page of really beautiful, thoughtful, spirit-free cocktails. And she's creating these complex drinks by incorporating things like sancho, which is a Japanese pepper, kuchika, which is like a twig tea. And she's able to layer these complex flavors that kind of mimic what you would get in a regular cocktail. But, I mean, she's far from the only person doing it. A lot of traditional bars are either adding or opening with an extensive, like, comprehensive alcohol-free menu. I mean, there's places like Harvard and Stone and Bibo Ergo Sum in LA. In New York, there's Death & Co. and Existing Conditions is a newer one. They have a menu of $16 non-alcoholic cocktails. If you can believe that. I mean, it is New York, but they're getting real cray with it. Like, they're making things with clarified tomato water and clarified passion fruit. They're putting it together in a drink that kind of mimics the idea of an old-fashioned. And my, you know, editor said it was one of the most remarkable things he's ever had to drink. So we're way beyond the idea of club soda with bitters. Like, these are cocktails, but without alcohol.
I've always been curious about the environment, the working environment in places that are non-alcoholic cocktails only, whether it's a pop-up or whether they're doing it all the time. I mean, are the employees happier working with people that aren't drinking alcohol cocktails? And are the tips the same? I mean, I don't know which direction that would go. Are tips higher or lower in a non-alcoholic drinking, you know, bar situation? These are the first things that jump to my mind when I look at those kind of places.
I think it's a good question. I wonder, maybe it's a more loving, supportive environment, like the Fizz fam. You know, everyone's really positive and supportive of each other. I mean, I have read a little bit about Listen Bar, and Lorelei is the woman who started it, and it sounds like they bring together people who are there to socialize and have a good time, and they don't necessarily need alcohol to do that. But I think one of the funny things is, you know, you go to a bar, you have a few drinks, it sort of lowers your inhibitions. And if you're not drinking, like, how do you get people to kind of come out of your shell? And I read that they do things like you spin a big wheel with, like, challenges on it. So you have to maybe do a catwalk around the bar. So it's kind of like little getting to know you games that make people loosen up. The way
that would require a cocktail for
would've.
me to do that, an alcoholic cocktail before I would do a catwalk on a bar. But
I think even then I pull it.
maybe two.
I think the economics are so interesting because I feel like so much of what drove the restaurant industry previously was pushing alcohol on customers because they were able to charge for it, but then at the same time they're having to pay top dollar for it. And so this is just so interesting to think that consumers now will pay just as much for a drink with no alcohol. I mean, restaurants must love this, right?
Yeah, and I know that we appreciate it. Like when my wife and I go out to dinner, I mean, in the old days, you would have like a Negroni or something before the meal to get the acids flowing, and then you would split a bottle of wine between two people, and then afterwards you might want to have a little bit of port or sherry or whatever with dessert or cheese, and so it's kind of nice to be able to have a non-alcoholic option going into the meal that still gets the acidity going and seems like you're having a cocktail, but it doesn't add up as the course of the evening goes over. So for me, that's been the biggest entry for me into non-alcoholic cocktails, is that opening foray before dinner starts.
Absolutely. I mean, there are just more options out there. I think these days it's less being considered an alternative to alcohol than it is just another expression of the craft cocktail movement, which is being driven by bartenders who are insanely creative people.
Yeah. Curiosity, because I know what a Manhattan tastes like. I know what a gin and tonic tastes like. Fill in the blank on all the other cocktails. But when I see something really bizarre for a mocktail before a meal that's made with twigs of this and different kind of fruits that I don't even recognize, then I'm going for it.
How could you not want to try that?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, on the one hand, I feel like a cynic. Like, it's all these. I mean, I think we read about some of these people who've written books and become sort of lifestyle gurus, and the whole lifestyle of embracing the no alcohol life and being healthy and yada yada. But one thing I love about this is the positivity and the creativity, because in the past it seemed like if you weren't drinking alcohol, everyone was looking at you like, do you have a problem, or are you pregnant, or what's wrong with you?
Yeah, what's your situation?
People still do that.
Yeah,
that's still a thing.
Yeah, there was a really good article, and I forget the woman's name. I'm so sorry, that she wrote. It was July 1st, so just a few days ago, in The Guardian, about this whole issue of walking the fine line between is the whole sober curious thing something that people should be Instagram influencing about and getting all bright and shiny and out into people's faces about doing this, when there are some people who can't stop and require medical intervention. And that article does a great job of talking about how that gets resolved within the sober curious community. And it seemed like it came down on the side of, anything that gets people talking and about their relationship with alcohol is a good thing, whether it's the fact that you're, taking Instagram pictures of yourself just because you can stop drinking for a month or 2 months or 3 months versus, having to go get treatment. So I thought that article was an interesting one. So July 1st, The Guardian, go look it up.
And yeah, we're recording this in July. I know a few people who are having a dry July.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough month to go dry.
I know.
More power to them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mentioned that I think bartenders are really driving this trend in the craft non-alcoholic cocktails. And a lot of bartenders are sober because they've lived that kind of lifestyle and they know how hard it is. And, it's not a secret anymore. It's not something that people have to be at all uncomfortable about. And so people are talking about it more and more. And I mean, certainly there are health considerations, both physical and mental. And those are, decisions that people will make for themselves. But I mean, I'm 34, and while I pretty much never go out with the intention of getting drunk, I don't feel great when I've had more than a handful of cocktails. I don't want to lose my whole Saturday to a hangover. So
Spoken
that's
by
a decision.
A beverage professional. Handful.
Well, I think this
you know how to pace yourself.
I think this is just a natural byproduct of a graying society. I mean, as your major buyers out there become older and older, you tend to slow down the amount of alcohol that's being consumed. And I think we'll probably break into this when we get to cans, but hard seltzers in a small can, kombucha combined, hard kombuchas in a small bottle, gives people a little bit of ability to portion control a little more easily than they would with a bottle of wine, and lower alcohol percentages as well, so you're getting less alcohol in a smaller container. I think that's fueling it. I know it's fueling it within the wine retail industry. My former peers and colleagues here in Portland, I'm seeing more and more wine distributor reps, more and more distribution company owners that are going alcohol-free, most of them by choice. And so you're right, between the restaurant chefs in Portland doing it and getting media publicity for it, and then quietly within the retail industry, you can see it spreading at a significant rate.
And Michael, have you noticed? I've noticed in Oregon, where marijuana is legal, I'm 45. I have friends my age who are having typical kind of age-related health issues,
Right.
and they're saying, I've stopped alcohol, but I'm having a little bit of marijuana before I go to a party.
Right.
And it's kind of, I've just noticed more and more people in my older age bracket
That's right.
saying that, and that's something new to me.
Well, as a representative of an even older age bracket, I'm seeing it definitely within that group.
Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of that, I think, is also being driven by younger consumers. I mean, you see so many younger people choosing to abstain from alcohol, whether it's just trendy or if it's for their own, personal health considerations, wanting to live a healthier lifestyle. But I mean, I still want to go out with my friends and go to the newest bars and restaurants and socialize and taste new things. And I think it's great that there are now more options for how to do that don't solely revolve around consuming alcohol.
That was a big part of that article in the Guardian, the July 1st issue article, was that there's been a 10-year straight line decline in underage drinking in the United States, and they were trying to think about whether that might be related to all of the social media, Instagram focusing on sober curious. That article featured the French actress that was being used. They hired an alcohol recovery program in France, wanted to draw attention to how people were using social media to show drinking alcohol all the time. So they hired a French actress and made her out to be like a real person and put her on Instagram. She developed hundreds of thousands of followers, and they used that as a teaching tool for youngsters. So I think there is a lot of this, it's cool to be in control kind of aspect of this, and that there are other options, and it's cool on social media. I think there may be a link. I don't know.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, would you guys go to a bar and spend $10, $12, $14, $16 on a drink without alcohol in it? I'm curious.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do it. Before meals, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, if it was inventive and creative, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I had to do something the next morning, for sure, it's kind of nice. That's what this one article said, that like the younger generations of people were really happy to be able to go out in a social setting, party for a few hours, but then be able to go home and still have the train of thought to do your nightly take all your makeup off and brush your teeth and all the things, read a book in bed for a while and then be refreshed the next morning. So there was kind of this health and beauty aspect to it as well, which I found interesting.
Michael, you just described my every single night. That's my nightly routine right there.
Absolutely. It shows. You're absolutely radiant.
Thank you.
Can't see it on the podcast, but trust me.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, Catherine. Like you said, you would buy it if it was inventive and creative, and I think that's the thought that they're putting into these drinks now. Like when it comes down to it, in the end, are you paying for a buzz or are you paying for an experience?
I'm paying for a gustatory experience and an aromatic experience.
Well, you're going to get it.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, which our producer Izzy Kramer brought to my attention, so I have to shout out to her because she's a 20-something. She loves JOMO, which is kind of like FOMO. FOMO being the fear of missing out. JOMO is the joy of missing out. And
Right.
This, I think, is a 20-something concept, and I think I need to embrace this. I love it. JOMO.
Well, when you're
I'm all
20
for it.
and when you're 60, JOMO hits in a hard way and for different reasons.
Okay, guys, we're going to taste two more of these delicious cocktails.
That is like a really good gazpacho on ice. I mean, it's got that
The Wild Mary.
tomato tang to it. It's got the little bit of whatever the spice component is to it.
That is really delicious,
That is-
actually.
Yeah, I would have that for breakfast.
That one you were just describing, Michael, was the Bloody Bucha Mary,
Yep.
an organic tonic lemon honey cayenne kombucha with
Yeah.
Wild Roots traditional vodka and Bloody Mary mix.
Yeah, the cayenne with the tomato is
Oh, it's traditional vodka. Yeah.
working really well.
And the green tea berry is green tea kombucha, Wild Roots Marionberry vodka, and Wild Roots traditional vodka with mint. All right, well, I guess we'll just have to cool off with our third segment. I couldn't decide what to call it, canned bubbles with benefits or sparkling bottled beverages spark joy, or whether you're on or off the wagon, the canned or bottled beverage has become almost a de rigueur style accessory these days, especially if that beverage is sparkling. Whether it's a canned gin and tonic or sparkling coffee, everyone seems to be walking around with something in hand. Especially fizzy drinks that have an added value, a fizzy drink that will wake you up or mellow you out or make you tipsy, or maybe punch up the number of probiotics in your gut. Michael Alberty, you recently, as you mentioned, wrote an article on canned wines, so I'm wondering what you discovered in terms of why are canned beverages so hot now?
I went into it thinking that, especially here in Oregon, that a primary motivating factor might be like environmental concerns of a lower carbon footprint, and I quickly found that was way down on the list of why people were buying canned wines. To show you how important canned wines and how big they've gotten, there's actually a college, Texas Tech University, who now yearly monitors and tracks the canned wine industry. And so they did like a series of phone interviews and online interviews, and they narrowed it down to just basically a couple of things, which was portability, meaning it was a lot easier to schlep 3 250 milliliter cans of some wine on a camping trip or a kayak trip than it is a bottle of wine. Easier to bring out after you collapse them down. And the opportunities of places where you can drink them. So places where it wouldn't be really super convenient to have a bottle of wine and a glass bottle with you, which is why you're seeing outdoor music venues like trying to capitalize on that. You know, I go to Timbers and Thorns games, and I see people drinking canned wines everywhere around me.
These are our professional soccer teams in Portland. Go
yes,
ahead.
two special, yes, the Timbers and the Thorns, men and women. And so I see them in all those settings that people are capitalizing on. And the other one that we talked about earlier is portion control. That was a big issue to people. And not so much in terms of self-restraint, but like if you're by yourself and you've come home 5 o'clock, you're making a meal, and you really don't want to open up a 750 milliliter bottle of wine, and it's not a special occasion necessarily, you don't really have anybody to talk to the wine, talk with about the wine, then opening up a 187 milliliter can or a 250 milliliter can was a great option for them. And I think it's being made easier by the fact that better wines are being put into cans now. Everywhere I went, I found people that were responsible for the wines that were like taking great pride. Like Ron Penner-Ash with Free Public was really prideful of the quality of the wines we're putting in. We've got a can sitting on the table from Dear Mom, which Marsanne, Roussanne, and Viognier. It's like there's more interesting grapes being used to make canned wines. These guys also make a Côte Rôtie style, 90% Syrah, 10% Viognier thing. So there's more interesting stuff being done, and I think it has to do with the can lining too. Like almost everybody in America, because of some financial arrangement, Ball, the jar company, they make the linings for the cans, and almost every canned wine producer in America uses them, and they dial in specific can linings for the scientific data from the wine. So the winemakers will send them, like Ron Penner-Ash said, that we'll send them the information for a red wine and tell them what the TA, what the pH levels are and acids and all that, and it helps maintain the integrity of the lining for an individual wine. So Ball guarantees their cans for 6 months. So I tested that, and I found some sparkling wines. I'm not going to name them because, these cans aren't designed to do this, but I let them sit in my office for 9 months. And then I opened them after 9 months to see what they'd be like. And the wine was fine, but the fermentation, the bubbles, it just seemed to be kind of gone away a little bit compared to opening up a fresh can. But they turn over so quickly in grocery stores. When I talk to New Seasons and Fred Meyer's clerks, they just can't keep them on the shelf. They're the Oregon ones in particular. I didn't ask about the California ones so much, but they said that the turnover is really rapid. And you can see that bottle wines, 750 milliliter bottle wines, have kind of flattened out over the last 10 years. They get excited if they get a 6% increase from year to year in bottled wine sales. Canned wines are seeing consistently 50, 60, 75% increases from year to year. So, like, I remember in the wine retail business when the Francis Ford Coppola people put out the Sophia in the little can with the little straw. I remember that hardly made a dent in the market at the time. So like in 2002, they were selling maybe in America $2 million a year in canned wine sales. And then a couple of years ago, it was like 48 million. But then it went from 48 million to like 81 million in 1 year this past year. So the growth is like really starting to pick up. They're only 0.8% of the wine sales market, but the opportunity to just explode is huge over the next several years. I don't see it going away because of that convenience factor. The people that are looking for less alcohol, lower percentage alcohols in smaller amounts, that's feeding it. In Oregon, you've got such an outdoor lifestyle with camping, hiking, and things like that. So I don't see it going away anytime soon.
I remember I wrote about Sophia right as it was coming out, and they sent me a sample, and the straw was faulty.
Yeah.
And so I had this whole description of how to make the straw work, and then it turned out I had the one straw that wouldn't expand.
Is that what they told you? you were the one?
No, I felt like a moron when I was
It wasn't the only.
I felt like a moron next time I came across a can, and I was like, oh, my straw didn't do that.
Well, when Sophia first came out, I was selling those in a small Midwestern college town, and I jokingly in a newsletter told people I don't advocate breaking the law, but these cans would be amazing if you. There was only one Cineplex in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois at the time. I said, if you were to go to a movie and smuggle these cans in with you, what a great thing to do! Drink wine while you're watching a movie. 2 weeks later, to show you how quickly those cans exploded, no pun intended. The manager of the movie theater called me and told me to stop doing that and maybe say something in the next newsletter about don't do that, because they said that so many people were bringing them in that the ushers, the first night that these things were there, the lights go down, the movie starts, and they could just hear these pop, 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 like rippling through the room. And so it was a big hit from early on.
Power of the pen.
Power of the pen.
Penelope, do you think that these canned beverages taste different?
It definitely depends. We've tried a ton of them at the office. I mean, every week we get more and more into the office, and some of it, I think, are people capitalizing on the trend or just sort of the novelty of it. I think maybe for a while it was hard for people to get over the idea of wine being in a can, just because, it has this notion of being poured out of a beautiful bottle and it's this luxury beverage, and like, what, you want me to drink it out of a can? But it's certainly getting more and more accepted. And, I think it's also about perception when you're drinking it. If, I handed you a can of wine, you might react differently to it than if you were being poured a bottle in a fine dining restaurant. So if you're there to enjoy your can of wine at a summer concert or out camping, I think you're going to enjoy it just as much, regardless of the vehicle that it's being served in.
I was really surprised. Like, I don't, on a regular basis, drink canned anything pretty much. So I hadn't really had a canned alcoholic beverage since 2002 to 2004. So I went out and purchased every Oregon-linked canned wine that I could possibly find, and I was really surprised how many of them were good. I mean, I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, tinny or something, but that was not the case at all. I found most of them were, I would happily drink at a wedding. If someone poured it to me in a glass, I'd say, yeah, that's perfectly functional. The ones where I really got excited were the sparkling wines, and the sparkling canned wines. Canned Oregon, the people at Stoller Winery make a fizzy rosé in a can that I was really prepared to not like, because I thought, oh, sparkling wine in a can. So I gave it the acid test, which is I opened it when my mother was in the house, and my mom is a sparkling wine freak. She only drinks sparkling wine, preferably champagne. So I thought, this is the acid test. So I didn't show her the can. I poured it into a large wine glass and gave it to her, and she was flipping out. And so I thought, oh, I need to really try this. And I tried it, and I thought, yeah, this is perfectly acceptable pink sparkling wine. I've noticed that everybody I talked to from Free Public and all these other places talked about how rosé in a can was like, the big seller. Yeah. That sparkling rosé in particular was like the coming together of two awesome forces in terms of sales. So even the house wine sparkling rosé Bubbles was, a pretty decent, pretty good sparkling wine, I thought.
I will say, however, those tend to be carbonated wine as opposed to Charmat method or traditional method, really traditional sparkling wine. So as long as you're willing to give up, sort of the true historic traditional styles of sparkling winemaking in exchange for a good price and portability and all that.
Yeah, portability, price. Although I don't know about, price when you... price came up as people questioning the price, thinking that per unit it was more expensive in a can, which is questionable depending on who you talk to and whose wines you're talking about. But what I appreciated was I actually found, so Chris Berg at Roots Wine Company has a second label called Klee, because he's a big fan of the Bauhaus artist. And I appreciated the fact that he was putting single vintage Willamette Valley Pinot in a can. And I didn't see anybody else with a can doing single vintage wines.
Yeah.
And he does a rosé that's a single vineyard wine into a can. So we're seeing this kind of ratcheting up in paying serious attention to the wines that you're putting in the can, especially if your winery name is on it. Like I noticed some people, they put their winery name in real small print on the back and come up with some other name, but some of these people are putting their winery name on it, so it's in their best interest. Yeah, it's in their best interest to make sure it's the best thing possible.
I think part of the reason we also see so many sparkling wines in cans is that we're kind of conditioned that when we pop open a can, we're going to have something cold and fizzy to drink. I think maybe a cool, flat red wine is not going to deliver the same experience that we're looking for in a can.
Right.
But Jordan, maybe you can speak to this. Like, I kind of feel like this proliferation of the seltzer trend has also spawned the popularity of other canned carbonated beverages that we're now seeing. Like, I mean, certainly the hard seltzers, but the CBD drinks and the canned wines.
And coffee.
I think new generations of entrepreneurs are interrogating some of the price and distribution models that were like given to them or they were expected to take on as they got into business, and subverting some of that, or listening to the young people around them who explained to them that subverting that would be profitable and then doing so. And you see this in canned stuff. I think that the next kind of big frontier of this for wine is going to be, tapped wine and crowler wines. Crowlers have really helped revolutionize for small breweries the ability to do what they're doing at a little bit of take-home scale, maximize how much purchase is being able to be made at their brewery without having to invest massively in canning. And this is something that keg wine. I had a piece in the LA Times a couple of weeks ago about keg wine in Los Angeles, and specifically this one bar in Echo Park in Los Angeles that's like world-class, amazing, direct production, tapped wines, directly working with winemakers in Oregon and California. And one of the things that I talked to the guy about, it didn't end up making the piece because it's print and there's only so much room, but was talking to him about, like, listen, when are you going to let people crowler? Like, when are you going to let people buy their thing and take it home? And he's like, well, we're working on it. There's some hoops you have to jump through with LA law, weirdly enough, that, like, it's not as simple as being able to do it from a brewer's perspective when you're working with wine, yada yada, but that's going to be. I see the canning thing in wine as being very much a symptom of a wider kind of thing that's happening within the whole ecosystem of how people make and sell beverages for a living, which is interrogating some of the 20th century ways of doing it and saying, do we really have to, or could we just not?
And it really falls into the category of everything old is new again, because when I was researching the canned wine article, I was really stupefied to learn that in 1936, California wineries deciding that they needed to show the rest of the country what California wine was like, but they didn't want to put glass bottles on trains. So in 1936, they started releasing almost exclusively white sweet wines made with, like, muscat and things like that. But they were white and they were sweet, and they were being sent out on trains in 1936, and then they just kind of flowed away. I think it's a great outlet for a winery that if you end up like a vintage like 2014 and you have a lot of leftover, you've got a lot of fruit and a lot of wine.
Right.
I mean, what better way to distribute it?
It's like cold brew. It's like cold brew.
Yeah, than through cans. Where you can.
It's the same thing.
Where you can can 3 to 4 times a year. So that was one thing a lot of the winemakers said was, with glass bottles, we get one shot at this, and then we have to sit around and hold inventory for flipping ever. Yeah. And it's very inefficient. So with cans, they're canning 3-4 times a year, and they're turning it over, and hardly any inventory.
That sounds like cold brew.
Yeah, but this all ties back to our sober curious stuff in a way, because the one thing that came up during all of this was that I don't think a lot of people fully understand yet how much wine is in a can. And so I saw people shotgunning 250 milliliter cans of sparkling wine, and then you drink 2 and 3 of them, and it's like, well, you just had 3/4 of a bottle of wine. Congratulations. But because it's in a can, and we think about 12-ounce cans of beer, and we think it's lower alcohol when it's really not. Most of the canned wines I tasted were about 13.5% alcohol. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed in terms of educating people. 187 milliliter can is a little easier. It's a glass. It's a restaurant pour plus an ounce. But
Well, I think we need to have another discussion about this because there's so much going on in this space right now. But sadly, we have to get out of here because the folks at Wild Roots need to open their tasting room. We're having too much fun here. So thank you, amazing panelists. Michael Alberty, wine columnist for the Oregonian newspaper and a freelance beverage journalist. Penelope Bass, senior editor at Imbibe Magazine. Jordan Michelman, founder and editor of Spread.com. Thank you so much, you all.
Thank you, Wild Roots.
Thanks.
Today's episode was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the beautiful tasting room of Wild Roots. Izzy Kramer is our tireless and multi-talented producer. Our editor and audio tech is Keelan King, who also composed and performed our amazing theme music. Special thanks to sound supervisor Stephen Cray and the web staff at OPB, who bring our show to life on the Oregon Public Broadcasting website. You can check out our own dedicated website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, donate to the show, and reach out to us on our social media channels. And if you've not already subscribed, you really, really should on iTunes, NPR One, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you leave us a rating, we will be oh so thankful. Have a cocktail or a mocktail or a seltzer, and have a wonderful August, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.